guys, so this is kind of part 2 of my how I do shit mini-series. So this is gonna be, the first part was just my filming equipment and all that. This is part 2 where I'm gonna talk about my camera settings, how I film, and also how I edit my videos. I'm not gonna get into too much technical detail. I'm just gonna assume that, of course, this is only if you're interested in doing YouTube yourself. Or again, if you just fucking want to hear me talk about whatever, put me in the background while you do your fucking homework again. I'm playing. I'm not gonna get into too much technical detail. I'm just gonna assume that you know a little bit about cameras already, and I'm just gonna give you the basic gist of how I operate my shit. So again, like I said, I have a Sony a7 II. It's a really great camera for video. The lenses that I use, again, are this one. This is one of these Sony ones, 1.8 35mm. I can't really use this because it's not a full frame lens. This A7S II is a full frame camera, mirrorless camera, so you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. But the one I'm using right now is the Samyang one. It's originally for Nikon, so I did have to buy a adapter to put it onto so that I can actually attach it to the Sony, because Sony lenses are proprietary, which means that they only make lenses for Sony cameras. So this is the Sony lens that I first mentioned, the short one. That's the one I used for a long time, and that's the one that I actually used, or this is the one that I used when I was using that other Sony camera I had. As you can see, there is a ring because it's not a full frame lens. So I can use this, except I do have to zoom in, but I feel like I have less room to work with, especially if I'm filming with another person. We literally have to sit super far back, but I already don't have that much space here. Although I can zoom, I just feel like I'm not using my camera to its full potential. And this is my Samyang lens, which, as you can see, I get way more real estate when it comes to space within this frame. You can see the little wire that I have here. In general, there is space right here and right here, and I don't really like that, so I do zoom in. And although I do have to zoom in, I still get a pretty wide shot. Now, one thing though is because this is such a wide lens, and I am actually very close to the camera. I'm really not that far. I probably look a little bit far away, but I'm really not. It is a little bit fisheye if I'm too close, as you can see. One thing is I really like a really blurred out background, but in order to achieve that, I have to be at a really low f-stop. Again, I'm assuming you have some knowledge of cameras if you're interested in what I have to say about this part, but to get a bokeh background, your f-stop has to be quite low, around maybe 1.4 to maybe 3.5-ish or so. The lower the f-stop is, the more my face will be focused and the more blurred out the background is. And then the higher it is, the more focused both the background and my face are. The only thing is, the lower that the f-stop is, the brighter the camera will get. My main issue is that the space that I have between my background and my camera is so short. If I was in a studio with a background that's really far from me, it would be totally fine. I would get a really blurred out background, but I don't have that much space, so my only resort is to lower the f-stop. But if I do that, as you can see, you can't... all you see is nothing, basically. So how do I get that really strong bokeh effect without it looking so blown out? I use an ND filter. An ND filter, basically, as you can see, if I turn it, it darkens. This will kind of shield and tint the lens of the camera so that you don't, so it's not too blown out. This is especially useful if you're outside, and a lot of other settings go into it, but for my particular situation, I need to use this because I want that really low f-stop. So let's bring that back up. Let me attach the... You can see that I can darken it a little bit, but it's still way too bright, obviously, so I just have to... There we go. So the f-stop is still the same, it's at 1.4 right now, but the ND filter helped bring down that overblown outness so that I'm at a normal level of brightness exposure. And you can really see now that the background is super blurred out now and my face is more focused. Only issue is with having such a low f-stop, I can't move too much or else I'll go out of focus. So when I get close to the camera, I do have to manually zoom in and stuff. Well, not zoom in, but focus, sorry. Now for the longest time, I was filming in 60 frames per second, and 60 frames is a very high frame rate. Basically, the higher that the frame rate is, the more lifelike and in the action that you are. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but that one movie, Lord of the Rings, there was one where the director filmed it in a really high frame rate, so it looked like the characters were like popping out of the screen. And my vlogs are filmed in 60 frames per second, so that's why they look really fast moving. But now I've been really into filming in 24 frames per second. And what that is basically it's just less frames per second, so it gives this sort of cinematic feel. In Hollywood, 24 frames per second is the standard, so that's why whenever you see videos filmed in 24 frames per second, it looks more movie-like, I guess. That's why if you go on YouTube and you see like those really cheap music videos, if you right-click and click Stats for Nerds, there's a little thing where you can check how many frames per second the video was in, and usually when it's like 30 and higher, that's what gives it that sort of like cheap home movie type of feel. But if you see the really professional looking ones, nearly all of them are filmed in 24 frames per second, so that's why it looks more like movie-ish, I guess. So next time you see like a really cheap low budget video or like music video or movie or something on YouTube, try right-clicking, checking the stats for nerds, and a lot of the times it will be a really high frames per second. Also, things like reality shows are filmed in like 30 frames per second or upwards. That's why they look more realistic. Sorry I have to film like this is really ghetto, but this is my monitor, so I can show you kind of like the other settings that I use on my camera. For my shutter speed, I always film in 50. As you can see, changing the shutter speed alters the exposure and things. So the general rule of thumb for shutter speed is whatever frames per second you're filming in, double that number, and that should be the shutter speed. I'm filming at 24 frames per second, so 24 times 2 is 48, but obviously there's no 48, so the closest number would be 50. There are situations where I do film in higher frame rates, like 60 or 120. That's when I want to film like really slow motion scenes or like parts of like my intros for makeup videos. Let's say I want to film, oh by the way, I film in 4K. If I want to film in higher frames per second, I do have to lower it to like HD. And here you can see I can film in 60 frames per second, or 24, 120, but let's say we can film 60. If this is the case, I do have to film in a higher frame rate. So 60 times 2 is 120, the closest number being 125. But as you can see, it darkens the image a little bit, so I'll just brighten it up again by changing my ND filter. If you can see this little chart here, the histogram, this helps you know that you're not too overexposed and you're not too underexposed. If I make it brighter, you can see it's climbing up. You really want to avoid these really high peaks. That means that parts of the image are, I forget the word, they're over something, but they're basically too bright. And if I darken it, it goes to the left, and that means the image is too dark. So you kind of want to get like a good, like in between. I kind of adjust depending on like the situation. That's why I like having this ND filter, because I can just like adjust it easily. Oh, another thing. This is the normal picture profile that I film in, but lately I've been really into color grading and adjusting the color to how I like it. So what I've been doing is, and what actually a lot of music video directors and like movie directors will do, is they'll film in a thing called log. And to access that, it depends on your camera, but for me, I just put it to a shortcut. And this is basically called picture profile. And as I'm scrolling through, you can see, this is picture profile 5, which is, and this one is set to Cinema Log 1. Is that what it is? Cine 1, that's what it is. Yeah, I like to film in Cine 1. Or if I really want like control over the color, I'll film in S-Log 2, which is this one, PP7. My music video director friend, Donghee, he films his music videos like this, so that later he can adjust the colors and get the right feeling for the music video or whatever he's filming. There is PP9, which is S-Log 3 right now. S-Log 3 is another popular way to film, but I don't really. For me, for basic color correction, I like to just use Cinelog 1. You can see how it turns basically like really gray and like super low contrast. And by that I mean like there's very little contrast between the colors that are going on the screen. When you put this footage into your video editor, it helps you easily adjust all the colors to the way you like it and add what we call a LUT, which is a lookup table, and that's just really getting into like complicated shit. But basically it's a filter basically for videos that helps you change like the mood and atmosphere of your footage that you put it on. So yeah, color grading is only for people that have really good computers, and right now I'm actually upgrading my computer, but my parts, my parents have my parts right now, so I'm still using my slightly slow computer. So I do just film this because it's easier, but when I get my new computer and my PC is a little bit more powerful, I will go back into using log. Again, a lot of music video directors, movie directors will film like this so that they can easily adjust colors later. It's a little bit more difficult if it's just the original like this, but that's what I do. Another thing is white balance. I have this little white balance card that I use. However, Sony cameras are kind of known for giving a kind of greenish tint to videos, so I do, let me see. You can put it on auto, but as you can see, it's a little bit like green. So what I do is I have this card thing, and I'll go into set like this custom one, and what you do is you click it, and then you put the white balance card in the center, and you take a shot, and it will adjust, like give you the perfect one, but I already have the one that I want, which is this one, and you can actually adjust it, and here you can make it more blue, pink, you know, you can basically change it here, and I just adjust it to how I like, which would be more on the cool side. Another thing is autofocus. This particular lens cannot autofocus. The Sony lens can, but a lot of times if I'm holding like a mirror and I'm doing my makeup, it will end up focusing on the mirror. So I prefer to just use manual focus, and all I have to do is just go to the actual lens and just, you know, adjust accordingly. So one more thing before I show you guys how I edit my videos. You see this light right here? You can see it in a lot of my videos actually. You'll see like lines going across the screen. A lot of times that also happens if you're showing like your phone to the camera, or there's any sort of like screen or TV in the frame. You'll see like little brown or black lines going across. In order to fix that, you need to lower your shutter speed. There's also like lens things that you can use to like, just like the ND filter, there are kind of lenses that you can put on your camera lens to like kind of shut that off basically. So like if you're showing your phone, or like even like window reflections, you can like turn off the reflection basically. It's really weird, but yeah, if you're experiencing those lines, not even just like on lights like this, but also on the screen in general, that usually happens if the shutter speed is way too high. So here on my computer, the first thing I do before I do anything else is I transfer all my files from my memory cards to my computer, and I have this little folder here called New Clips, and I organize each video by folder. I'll basically just make a new folder, title it whatever the title of that video will be, and then I drop in all the associating files like my video clips, the audio from my microphone, and like thumbnail photos if I took any. And if I ever need to put like a photo in the video, then I'll save it to this folder. Before I actually edit the video, what I do is I need to edit the audio. So what I use is Adobe. So for my videos, I use Adobe Premiere, and so obviously it makes sense to use the associating audio program, which is Adobe Audition. And what I basically do is I'll drag and drop, like this is the original file that the microphone records in, and I'll drop it into here, and it will come out like this. And it sounds okay, but I want to improve the audio because there's going to be like a lot of background noise and it's not loud enough, etc, etc. So I'll Control A and select all the audio, then go to Effects, Amplitude and Compression, and Dynamics Processing. I set this to F so that I can quickly just Control A and then F, and I'll get the menu up real quick. If you are interested in making your audio sound better, try out this preset. I had to do it myself. You can just press add a point and then put in these individuals, so you should screenshot this now if you want. Russell is the one that showed me this, and this really just makes the audio sound so much better. Your voice basically will be much more clear, and any background noise will be much quieter. So I think it just sounds way better, and I'll click apply, but I already did this, so I don't need to, and then I'll just export it to this folder again. So that will be the audio that I'm using. Now going to Premiere, I use Premiere. What I've done is I've created a project file that will help make my workflow much faster, because as you guys know, I upload really often. At the rate that I have to upload, I need to create a system in which I'm able to edit quickly. And I'm not going to show you every single thing, but this is basically like the gist of what I do, and hopefully it will help you in being able to edit things quicker. When you first open Premiere, this is obviously not the first screen that you see. You can like make a new project, open a project, etc, etc. But what I've done is I've created this new file called New Video 1. And honestly, I can just put new video, but whenever I start a new video, this is the project that I open, and I'll save it as a different file so that I can go back and use this again whenever I make a new video. But what this new video file basically has is here, if you can see in the project bin, I have intro. This is like it's basically just random files. I'm not gonna get into too much detail about what I have in here, but I'll have this meme faces, which is just a bunch of stuff that I anyway. This is just a bunch of files that I have that I use or memes that I use quite often that I'll put into videos, inserted videos if I need to use them. So because I use it so often, I'll just have it here so it's easy to drag and drop. But I've got other things like this this thing that you'll see often that I use for between transitions. Then I have this thing that you guys are quite familiar with. It's the little popping sound that I have. And I often use that a lot, so I have it here. Again, I'm assuming you already have some knowledge of how to use an editing program. Again, I'm using Premiere. You might be using Final Cut if you have like an iMac or something, but for me, for Premiere, the important thing for creating a sequence is that for me, most of my videos are 4K, so the frame size of my sequence will be 4K resolution. But for this video, I think it might be 1920, like 1080p, so these numbers will be different. But one of the most important things is, it's grayed out right now, but frame rate that I'm going to have my video should be this. Of course, if you're making a video that's 60 frames per second, 30 frames, etc., you'll have adjusted this. But for me, basically this is 24 frames per second, and I have the right frame size. And then I'll have my project ready to go. Another default sort of thing that I have in this file is my intro and my outro. Those are the two main important things. For my intro, it's a sequence, and a lot of people wonder what program I used to make it, but it's really just in Premiere. It's actually really easy. It's a sequence that's made up of 3 layers. The first layer is just literally just a white background. You can change it to anything I want actually, but it's just white. The second layer is this video that I found on the internet. This is what you see that's behind the text. And then the top layer is literally just the text. It's just my name. And then what I did was on the second layer, under effects, I have opacity set. No, I put a track matte key layer, and I set it to video 3, which is this layer, and that's how it gave me this effect. And then I'll have my outro. As you guys know, the last 20 seconds of most videos have that little area here where you can put the other videos that you can click on your phone or something. Really quick, this is how I sync my audio with my video. I go to the point in my video where I clap. In the video, my hands touch here, but here in the audio, you can see it's clearly that's not where the clap sound is, so I kind of just go up to where the clap sound is. And then this right here is the audio file from my microphone, which, as you guys know, I already edited in Audition. So I'll go to the very beginning of the clap, which should be right here. And then I'll click this button, which is marked in, and then I'll drag it and replace this audio right here. So that way, and then I just don't need that, so I just skip it. And then, oh my god, terrifying here. I generally like to raise the gain because sometimes it's a little quiet. What I also like about this is that I can see the parts where I'm like literally not doing anything. So I'll just go right up to the next part, and that way it makes editing so much quicker because I'll know what parts I'm talking and what parts I'm clearly not talking. So yeah, that's how I sync up my audio and my video. The number one thing that really helps me editing all my video super quick is there's only a set number of functions that I use for editing. Because my left hand is just sitting on the keyboard right here, what I do is I just set all the keys that are nearby to the settings that I use most often. If you find that your editing is really slow, I really think you should take this piece of advice because it helps me a lot. Of course, you can adjust the keys to whatever you want, but I'll put the keys that I use up here for you to see. So for me, the most basic editing things that I need are cut, which is, or actually I think it's called add edit in Premiere, which is basically it splits a clip between 2 things right here, so that I can easily delete this. Then I set my X key to ripple delete, and that basically just deletes that clip that you've selected and moves everything over to the left. My Z key is just delete, so obviously you can see the difference. This is just delete, and this is ripple delete. So I have them both next to each other depending on what I need. Z also deletes things like, if I need to delete something that's in here, then it will delete that. What else do I have? I have F set to gain. Sometimes if the audio is not loud enough, I need to adjust the gain. So obviously if I put like a higher number, the audio will be louder, etc., etc. So my F key is that. For D, because I record audio and video separately, I have to drop in my, my audio separately. You can see that when I select one, that only that is selected. But in this case, this is the original video, so obviously the audio and the video are together. For this one, I set D as, what's the word? I think it's link. So I can easily just press D, and you see the 2 lines. That means the 2 clips are connected. So when I select it, they'll be linked together, so they're treated together, basically. Whenever I need to put text on the screen, I set my S button to new title, and it's just okay here. And this is the screen where you can create text or whatever, etc, etc. And then A is basically duplicate. So if I'm working on a video where I have several subtitles, it's really annoying to do this okay all the time. So what I'll do is I'll create a title that is set to the way I like it, so it'll be here. I'll create the black bar separately, and then that way, if I need to make another subtitle text, then I can just duplicate it, and then I'll just adjust that text accordingly to whatever I need it to be. That is literally fucking insane. Another function that I use like all the time is zooming in and out of the screen like this, so that I can like go to other parts of the video, or if I need to like make fine details. And you can set keys on the keyboard, but for me, because it's a function I use all the time, I set it to my keys here on my mouse. And this is a game mouse from Logitech. I think it's the G600 or something. I'll put a link down below. But it's a gaming mouse, and I got this as a gift from Russell and Diana. And on the side here, you can see that obviously it's meant for gaming because you can set hotkeys to all these keys right here. But I set G12 and G13 because my thumb is on there. I set G12 to, I think the original button is minus, and then G13 to plus, and that's what basically zooms in and out of the little timeline. And so when I need to zoom out of the timeline, I'll just press the minus key or the G12 on my mouse. Or if I need to zoom in, like this, I'll press G13. And so I think that really helps. But of course, you don't need a gaming mouse for that. You can just set it to some keys here on the keyboard. So that was a long and kind of confusing video, but I hope that if you are into YouTube, or you're doing YouTube, or you're thinking of starting YouTube, I hope that showing you my process will help you or helped you in some way. So yeah, I'm gonna get back to my normal videos, I guess, tomorrow. So I'll see you guys then. Bye bye.
Watch it. It's